Welcome to Public Speaking with Peter George. Do you want to be calm, confident, and credible every time you speak in public? Then stay tuned as Peter and his guests discuss public speaking tips, techniques, and tactics that help you increase your impact, influence, and income. Here's your host, Peter George.
Why do you speak? Is it for the sake of speaking, or do you speak as a means to an end? I often say, don't speak to inform, speak to transform. While my guest, Roy Osing, puts it a little differently. He suggests you speak not to the logical side of the brain, but the emotional side, so you can, as he puts it, light fires in people. Roy is the only author, entrepreneur, and executive leader who delivers practical and proven, audacious, unheard of ways to produce high-performing businesses and successful careers. As president of a major data and internet company, his leadership in audacious, unheard of ways took the company from its early stage to $1 billion in annual sales. An accomplished business advisor, he is the author of Be Different or Be Dead and The Audacious, Unheard of Ways I Took a Startup to $1 billion in Sales. Listen in and learn how you might use your speaking differently than you have in the past. Here's my conversation with Roy Osing. Welcome to the show, Roy. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hey, listen, delighted and grateful to have a chance to speak with you and your audience.
Roy, you talk about audacious leadership. What is it, and how is it different from what might be considered traditional leadership?
Yeah, so the audacious piece is really founded in what I call breakaway from traditional kinds of concepts around leadership. And it's really rooted in the fact that when I was asked to take a leadership position in an internet business to basically grow it, we were steeped in traditional cultures, traditional ways of doing things, engineering-driven, voice kind of culture. And in order to actually move the organization to where we needed to go, we had to break away from that stuff. So it was literally to metamorphosize the thing. And the only way I could figure out how to do it would be to actually juxtapose myself from tradition, okay, where we had traditional concepts, rooted in planning, where I viewed, let's do it and learn from it as an example. Completely different sorts of ways of thinking about it. Because if we weren't able to do that, we couldn't make the kind of performance improvements that we needed to make. And so, yeah, it was audacious. And I got to tell you, I got into a lot of interesting conversations with my executive colleagues. And this was the old telecom days, okay? Heavy engineering focused, heavy network focused in voice services. And we had to make the move into the internet space. And so, yeah, it required a lot of stepping away from what people were used to. And yeah, that was audacious and painful. That's when I learned pain was indeed a strategic concept.
Can you give us any examples?
Yeah, a couple. One of the things that I learned really early on was success in any space is a function of being different. It's not a function of being similar. And yet, when I looked around at all the competitive claims that were being made, they all use what I call claptrap expressions like, well, we're better, we're best, we're number one, we're the market leader. All textbook stuff, Peter, doesn't mean anything, doesn't mean diddly squat to a customer trying to make a decision, right? So I created this only statement as a way to cut through that. And the only statement says, we are the only ones who, okay, we're not better, we're not best, we're the only ones. And it's really a challenge to actually create that for people. But once they have it, once an organization has it, it unleashes the power, right? Because you indeed can kind of prove what you're saying. You can observe the fact that you're different. And so my mantra very early on became, let's look for differences. Let's observe similarities. But quite frankly, we're not going to worship similarities. We're going after being different. And that led to a whole bunch of things and programs inside our business that actually lit fires in people and inspired their emotional side as opposed to their logic side. One example is I had a program called Cut the Crap. Now, I didn't get a whole lot of plaudits for using the word crap, but everybody knew what it was, right? So like the non-strategic stuff, the grunge that gets in the way of people doing their jobs. Everybody knows it's crap, so I called it crap. right? Much to the chagrin of my colleagues. But it was an example of really getting out there to get people's attention and capture their hearts and souls to actually do things differently. And so I've spent, 3 to 4 decades just banging away at this stuff, not happy with where we are, because I still think businesses generally are textbook driven. They tend to be mediocre in terms of the way they explain how their uniqueness to the marketplace. We got a long way to go. So you and I can make a difference today, right? We can make a difference. We can start that change and keep it moving. That's my hope.
That would be awesome. And when you stand out, not only do you have a different story to tell, but people have an obvious reason why they should do business with you or not. You may not be the right fit for them, but at least they can tell the difference.
Exactly. The really important part of that whole piece is to really clearly understand who your customers are. Okay, because you're speaking to them. Like most, right. If you look at most competitive claims, they speak to the market or the world. An example is, we're in business to inspire the universe. What does that have anything to do with anything, right? But it's that lofty, I call helium-filled declaration of intent, which quite frankly, from a marketing and business point of view, means nothing. So the only statement brings that down. It gives it clarity, and it speaks directly to the customer group you decide to serve. And that's the key thing. It's really, really, really focused. And that's one of the things that makes it powerful. I'm just talking to you about my only. I'm not talking about the guys beside you. And from a marketing point of view, it provides amazing clarity, and program development is really, really simple when you have that focus.
Now, how is the ability to communicate and communicate well important to your audacious leadership role?
Well, given the fact that we were just starting in the internet space and we had a business to build, it was incredibly crucial. And I've always looked at communications, Peter, as not as an end. A lot of people think about it as an end. What do you want to be? I want to be an accomplished speaker. No, that's not what you want to be. What you want to do is light fires in people to achieve a business end. And so what I was trying to do here is say, all right, what do I have to do to convince people that we have a journey to go on? And I had to be really good at making that journey clear. I had to be really effective at lighting fires in people to inspire them to join me in the journey, not follow me, but to join me in this journey, right? And so the communications piece was absolutely the most important, I would say, strategy to execute on a vision to build a business around the internet. And without effective communications, and as I say before, getting the passion and passionate commitment of people, we never would have got to 1 billion. And I got to tell you, I get goosebumps today every time I think about getting to that stage. In fact, I got them right now, right? Getting to that stage, the ability to actually move a business and achieve that through people who all were just lined up with that goal and emotionally committed. It's mind-blowing to me, and I'll never forget it. How rewarding. But without communications, never would have happened. Never would have happened.
Well, that's what Warren Buffett says, right? His public speaking skills were key to his success. Without being able to communicate clearly to the other people involved, they never would have gotten to where they've gotten.
Absolutely true. It really is I think about it from the point of view that it's a fundamental requirement to execute on a strategy. If you don't have a good communication strategy, and if you're not able personally as a leader to communicate and light fires, then you can't execute the strategy because people aren't hooked on it.
What was your strategy?
Basically, to take this internet business and just grow it as fast and as large as we could without really knowing where the limit was. Because, as I say, in those days, we were rooted in telecom, but the future wasn't telecom. It was the internet, and we had no experience in it. So imagine the challenge of saying, whoa, we're voice driven, we're engineering driven. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it required a refocusing to customer service and marketing, et cetera. We needed to build a new culture. Well, the only way you can build a new culture, right, is to be able to convince people that that's what you need to do and to ask for their help. And if you don't have good communication skills, if you're not able to light fires in people, that will never happen. And in this particular case, the business goal was, well, we didn't know it was going to be 1 billion, but we knew It was a huge upside. We only knew it was $1 billion when we looked back on it and said, wow, look at that. We got $1 billion. Yeah, it was an audacious goal without really knowing how we were going to get there. But just knowing in our hearts that the potential was there if we did the right thing with people, fundamentally.
Now, do you think a lot of companies have leaders in position and those leaders don't communicate clearly or effectively? And if so, how does that harm their objectives?
Yeah, I think without being critical, I think communications is not given the priority, okay, with leaders the way it should. Like they treat it as kind of an unnecessary evil to go out and give speeches. But they completely miss the point. It's not about giving speeches. It's about lighting fires in people so that you can get some behavioral change to drive performance improvements in the organization. So I never looked at communications as a thing on it itself. It was a means to an end. And that end was my responsibility. I had to outperform everybody else in the marketplace. And the only way I could do it would be to get people on board to do it. So for me, it was a fundamental thing. I did this day in and day out. I was always in a communications mode. There's a lot of leaders that don't think that that's an important part, or they don't think about it. They delegate it. They delegate, for example, the presentation of the strategic plan to the guys in business development. What? I mean, what more important leadership role is there than to convince people to go on your journey? There is none, right?
That's right.
So I think there's a lot of improvement in the leadership ranks that could be made. And it's essential. In fact, I honestly believe a lot of the sub-performing organizations, one of the largest factors is we have leaders that don't see this role, that aren't out there beating the bushes, getting people excited, appealing to the right brain, not the left brain logical piece. There are long ways to go there. And I'm hoping that we can make some progress relatively soon.
Now let's look at those two things together, differentiating and communicating. What are some of the things that you need to do to make your communications different, to make them stand out?
Yeah, well, to your point, the first thing I did is recognize that I needed a context within which to build my own personal communications plan. And that was around being different. So everything I looked through a lens of saying, how can I do this differently? How can I? And one of the things that struck me really early on is if I wanted to get an emotional commitment out of an audience, then I needed to make it more than just about the content. The content I obviously thought of was kind of like, yeah, it's a necessary piece, but it's not the most important piece. And so I had this view that says, every time out, it was a performance. It was a performance. I'm on the hook. I'm going to give the best performance every time I am out there. The content, yeah, was important, but not the most important piece. The most important piece was get an emotional response from the audience and have them say, wow, that was fun, Roy. I never knew strategic planning could be so much fun, and talking about the vision. Well, the reason that they felt that way is I made them feel that way. I made fun of myself. I made fun of the organization. I came up with crazy programs like Cut the Crap and Killing Dumb Rules and Hiring for Goosebumps, all these things that people went, what is that all about? And it was all unleashed because my view of the speech was never about the speech. It was about a performance and creating a dazzling experience for them. And in a way, it's like customer service. Right? Like people expect that their internet service is going to work, but that doesn't create loyalty. What creates loyalty is when you surprise them with the way they feel when they receive the product. It's the same thing with a speech. I surprised them all the time. I gave them the content. I told them, here's where we'd like to go. Okay. And I need some feedback. But what they really got was enjoyment in the journey to learn and a commitment to support that. That's what they got. And it was all because I had this thing that says, this is a performance. And performing is hard because it requires an incredible amount of energy, as you know. And I had this little gimmick. Every time I would go on, I took a deep breath. Now, very few people know this. Took a deep breath and I just closed my eyes and went, just energy up. Get the energy up. Because if they ever saw me in a state of non-energy, why would they ever believe me? Right? And so it was huge. But the performance piece was great. I love that. I got so much back from people by just looking at their eyes and seeing how they responded to the content and the experience. It was another goosebump moment.
I love that because I tell my clients, this is a performance. And there's a lot of people in my industry who say, no, it's not a performance. Oh man, it really is, because you've got to connect with the audience. If you don't make that connection, it's like you said, the emotional connection, well, then nothing else matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I learned is that it's not the logic that creates high performance, right? It comes from inside your guts, and it's driven by what you feel, not what you know. I mean, I can teach you the business. What I can't teach you is how to feel. So I got to unleash that somehow. And I found for myself, it was pretty straightforward. I just had the ability to connect with people on that basic level because I'm a simple guy, right? I grew up around an organization and up to president, right? I didn't launch in with an MBA, for God's sakes, and all these expectations that people had. I earned it on the way up, and I made a lot of friends, and I gathered a lot of friends on the way up, and I could rely on them because I established trust and integrity. And when I spoke to them, they were excited. They believed me, and they said, okay, Roy, I'm in. That's all I wanted. I'm in. How many leaders do you know have people go, wow, yes, I'm in? Unfortunately, Peter, not enough.
Top ones. The top ones get people to move with them.
That's it.
And the others, unfortunately, it's like you said, it's all the logical side. And you can't rally around logic.
No, and I think to a large extent, it's driven by the way we're taught. Okay, like people are taught, okay, that content rules. And I'm not saying that content isn't important. Of course it is. Without content, you can't speak. But I'm saying it ain't enough. It's just like my view on textbooks. People think I bash textbook thinking, and I do to a degree, only to make the point that it's not enough. The practical side of the business world is more important, okay, than the case study that you just did at Harvard. And I'm sorry, I'm tired of talking to people about their case study experience. I wasn't interested in that, right? I wasn't. I wanted them to show me how they could apply that in a different way that would dazzle me as the guy asking them questions. And unfortunately, they're not taught that. So the education system needs to be revectored a little bit. We need hiring for Goosebumps 101, okay, as a course. We just do. And things like that. We need to encourage people that color outside the lines, not inside the lines. We need people who believe that you can't formularize a business. And yet every MBA that I talk to talks about behavioral science and formalizing predictive modeling. And I'm saying, okay, that has a certain level of importance, but there's more to making you successful than just that. And I think the speaking piece gets caught up in that, the pedantics of what constitutes a good speech and learning what works and what doesn't. Why don't we do that in terms of educating?
I agree.
Especially around speeches.
When I work with my clients, first thing we work on is who's the audience? You got to know who you're talking to. And there are 6 different components, but one of those things is, how do you want to make them feel? Where so many people are saying, what are you going to say to them? What's the content? All these nuts and bolts. One of my questions is, how do you want them to feel? So many of my clients, when they hear that, they go, huh, I've never thought of that before.
That's exactly the point. I mean, it's because the content is still viewed as king or queen or whatever, pick a pronoun, right, to go with. I mean, it's just, and it's not, okay? It's a means to an end. And the end is the feeling. Actually, what I would say to you is it's even more than that. It's more than just the feeling, okay? It's the action that you want them to take because of the way they feel. That's what, and in my case, just getting involved in leading a startup to $1 billion, I knew exactly what I wanted them to do. I wanted them to go back to their job and perform it like they've never performed it in their lives before, doing it because I was able to motivate them passionately to think and realize how important it is. And so it's like rolling that chain down from content to feeling to result. Needed them to get to the result because I wasn't getting paid to make them feel good. I was getting paid to make them perform better and get the $1 billion, which we didn't know it was $1 billion. And so that's the final link, I would say, that every leader needs to understand. It ain't just about making a good speech or a powerful speech. No, that's not it. you need to think it through strategically in terms of the basic end game, and that is to drive superlative performance. Why? Because that's what differentiates organizations. And as leaders, we are responsible to differentiate ourselves from the bad guys out there, right? And make the shareholders rich or any other owners rich and give people work. Simple stuff, I think.
It is. And I love the way you think, because it's like you're reading what I wrote. My next question after how do you want to make them feel is, what do you want them to do now?
Absolutely. So you got it. We're on the same page for sure. We just got to get a whole bunch of the other dudes on the same page.
So how do we do that? For the people who are saying, oh, wow, this is a great idea, or, hey, common sense that I just never thought of. What's the one thing, the first thing they should do to strive to that audacious communication level?
I think there's a couple of pieces. Like I don't believe in silver bullets. I don't think there's a single silver bullet to anything in the world these days, or certainly in business. But there's a couple of things. The first thing is you really need to think through who you are. Okay, you really need to think through whether, in fact, you want to look at the world differently. Because for me personally, it all sort of stemmed from that desire to be different. And that forced me out of the pocket of textbooks. It forced me to come up with, in those days, the whole performance angle, which I know may not be new these days, but what is new is very few people are doing it, right? So until we see millions of people treating speeches as performances, I think it's a new idea. That whole thing started out with, what makes me special? Why should people want to listen to me? Right? Why? What is it? Well, for me, it was simplicity. I'm a simple guy. I speak it sometimes edgy language. Yeah, sometimes I swear. Well, who cares? At the end of the day, I just want them, as you said, to do things differently and move to an end game. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is you need to move beyond your content. And when I say that, I have to say your content must, what I call, flow through your veins. You need to know your content so deeply that it just kind of exudes when you open your mouth. And so that lets a lot of leaders, it shuts them out of the door right away. These are the guys, generic guys, that read speeches, do all this kind of stuff, read from teleprompters. You can't have your content flowing through your veins if you're reading from a teleprompter. You have to be that good at your content, because if you're not, then you'll never earn the right to dazzle them with how they feel. You can't go to feelings first. You have to go to own the content, know your stuff, have it flow through, you need to perspire your content, right? All these words, you just do. And if you can do that, then you move to the next step and say, okay, I know this so well. Now it's time. I've earned the right to kind of move beyond that sort of element and now talk about the things that I'm going to do to light your fire. But I'll never be able to light your fire unless I convince you that I own this stuff better than anybody in the world. You are talking to the expert of experts in being different or be dead. There's no one else out there that can talk the way I'm talking, because I've done it. Proof point, right? How many people say I got the billion? So I always end up. So now I've got you. Now I can take you to the next page, and we'll have fun with this. And hopefully I'll stir your emotions some way.
I love the phrase you just used, and you rode right over it, but it's the name of your book, Be Different or Be Dead.
There I go. Yeah. Exactly.
When I saw that was the title of your book, I thought, well, that's so true, because if you're not different, ultimately you're not going to perform or get the sales you need or whatever it might be. So you might technically not be dead, but you won't be thriving.
People don't like to think about the ultimate consequence of not differentiating yourself well. And all you need to do is look around, and you can point your finger at companies, right, who have literally died or taken a lot of collateral damage with them because they've not been successful in differentiating themselves, because they use things like claptrap and best and all these things that we talked about earlier. So it is the ultimate consequence. And look at Peter, I've been writing about this stuff since 2009. This is not new to me. I mean, this whole notion is probably more important today than it was when I wrote my first book in 2009. I mean, the world is so complicated. There's so many challenges. There's so many competitors. I mean, consumers have got so much power these days that we need to get better at differentiating. We need to get better at understanding if you're not dead, different, you're dead or soon will be, and accept that as a reality. But the problem is there's a lot of ho-hum out there about this. I'm disappointed in that. And I have this vision that says, on this be different or be dead scale, where you look at a distribution curve, a normal distribution curve, the guys at the way out on the right-hand side, the superstars, they will always be there. The guys in the far left, which are the non-performance, they will probably always be there. But the guys in the middle, that glut around the mean distribution, if we can move those guys 5 points, that's all we need to do, move them to the right 5 points. Can you imagine the performance increase that we would see? That's all I want to do, through talking to guys like you and helping spread the word about differentiation and being different in a fun way. I mean, that's the whole point. Be different or be dead is my way of catching your attention and earning the right to have a conversation with you, which is what we've done here. And then hopefully getting support to continue promulgating the message every time out. And I do it all the time. Every time I touch somebody, I find a way, find an angle. Even my grandkids, they go, "Papa, be different or be dead." They got the stuff, boom.
That's awesome.
And they like my Instagram posts and everything else. I mean, I got them. And you have to do that to make a change, right?
Hey, Roy, this has been a lot of fun and extremely informative. Where can my listeners go to connect with you?
Well, you can go to bedifferentorbedead.com and please come and join me there. I'd love to have you. You can get access to my books there, all 7 of them. I've got a page of my books. I also blog every week. And so I'm constantly talking about this stuff around be different or be dead. And my latest book, which is called The Audacious Unheard of Ways I Took a Startup to $1 billion in Sales. People might be interested in that. Again, that was the ultimate result of all of this stuff. It wasn't just doing different things for the sake of being different. It was to drive performance. But the other thing I want to mention, I'm happy to have a personal conversation with people. And so my email address is roy.osing@gmail.com. Please reach out to me if you have a question, if you think this is crazy, or if you think it's a good idea. If I can help you anyway, feel free to reach out. I'd be grateful to help you.
That's very generous. Roy, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Peter, for having me. I appreciate it as well.
If you would like to engage, impact, and inspire your audience every time, check out my new book, The Captivating Public Speaker, on Amazon.
That's a wrap of another episode of Public Speaking with Peter George. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Tune in Monday when you'll hear another episode of Public Speaking with Peter George, and again Thursday for your next episode of Quick Bites, public speaking tips and techniques you can digest in 5 minutes or less. Until next time, remember, when it comes to speaking in public, you've got this.